Well, since we don't have a prior chair here, we have two new members. I'll at least get us started if you're ready, Dawn.
Yeah.
Okay, we traditionally start with call to order, so I'll call to order the March 21st meeting of the Board of Selectmen, and we'll start with introductions.
My name's Tyler Eaton.
Charlene Anderson.
Donna Danis,
Chris Starndale, Town Administrator.
and we also have here tonight.
Paul Colby, co-administrator, I'm sorry.
All right, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Wait a minute.
It moved. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. When did that move?
I think it went into the, it moved for the election and didn't come back. I think.
Wow, well, that's okay.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
That's good.
Conference room.
Okay. So, Chris, do you want to guide us through the election of chair and?
You have to have nominations, and 2 votes would be sufficient. So if you're acting with the gavel, I'd say you should say, are there any nominations, and go from there.
Okay, and are we going to do boards and committees as well, or are we doing that later?
That, you could do it now, or you can do it under number 5
Okay.
on your agenda.
All right, so let's start with election of chair. I'll entertain motions.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Donna Danis as chair.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. I'll gladly assume the role of chair. I thought Tyler was gonna duke me out for it. All right, so the first step, item number 3, is to approve the accounts payable and payroll manifests. And Chris, why don't you just kind of talk a little bit about the process and what
Yep.
this is?
What you're gonna see printed out is 2 separate documents. One's called an edit list and one is a manifest. You, as selectmen, have to authorize every expense made by the town, and the mechanism that we do that with is the manifest. The manifest is basically a list of every check that was printed in the last, it's done by batches. You'll see 2 different flavors of manifest. One is payroll and the other is accounts payable, virtually everything else. They're each done every 2 weeks. So your approval kind of runs in 3 steps. You'll get a look at the list before we print the checks. You'll get a look at the actual, one of you at least will get a look at the actual checks when they're signed. One of you has to sign each check that goes out. And then you will, your real formal action is approving the manifest. And the manifest actually lags the process a little bit, but you will have already seen everything. And the way that you get that first look at it is the other document there called an edit list.
That's this one.
That is really the same information. It's the, who's the vendor, what's the amount, what budget account it falls under. That's something that you'll get electronically every other Friday from Betsy. And if you have any questions about any of that stuff, you want to know what something is or what we're doing, where it's going, what it's for, you can reach out to Betsy or me, and we'll get you that answer, usually same day. Sometimes it might take until Monday to catch one of us. But you'll have an opportunity to catch something before we even print a check if you have a concern about something. And so that edit list is kind of an informal thing, but it's a good way for us to get you in early and before it's, before the train has left the station. And it's a way you can do it at home. You can just kind of flip through the list. And so what we ask you to do at each meeting is initial the edit list. That's for checks that are coming up. Sign the manifest. There's a place for your signature on the manifest. For the things that have already been done. And we will also ask you to sign checks periodically. I think we'll probably get into a groove of when it's convenient for who to come through the office and do that. There are really kind of 2 batches. There's the payroll batch, which is really time sensitive. We have to pay our employees in a certain period of time. And we've got it lined up so that the accounts payable stuff usually rides along with that so that, just to keep it simple. But every other week, between Friday at noon and Monday at noon, we're gonna need to have one of you come in to sign payroll. That's the most important piece from a timing point of view. We used to have one that would come in on the weekends and pretty much do payroll each time. And another one that often came to the office at the same time every weekend would sign the payable check pile. And we can,
Yeah.
move a little bit to meet your schedule in that way, but our window is really
Yeah.
Friday noon to Monday noon. And if you think of it and you're in the neighborhood and, until we get into a groove, you may hear from Betsy or I and say, hey, can somebody come in and sign checks?
She'll generally email and say they're ready. I've been coming in most recently, like either Friday afternoon or first thing Monday morning, because those times work for me, but, we can just kind of, she'll let us know, and she'll send out an email, and if you're gonna be in the area or you're free, you can just reply and say, I got it, I'll be there.
Cool.
I've also found the edit list that comes from Betsy that we get via email. When I first got on the board, I found it helpful to go in and sit with her and just kind of go through it and understand who the different vendors were and what the money was being spent on, so that was helpful to me.
Yeah, and if you ever want to do that and just flip through, two piles of them is a month worth, and that is the vast majority of our vendors. A lot of this stuff is routine.
Yeah.
But it may not jump out at you like, what is that for $1,200 every 2 weeks or something like
Yeah.
that. So feel free to shoot us a note or come in and just stroll through stuff and we'll rattle it off for you and explain what things are. Or if you have some more substantive concern of like, what are we doing here? That's what this is for, so.
So Chris is very good at laying out our motions for us.
Okay.
So for this, we need a motion and a second to, as read right there.
So I'll make a motion to approve the accounts payable manifesto of March 14th, 2016, and the payroll manifesto of March 15th, 2016.
I'll second that.
I should have asked, do you guys have any questions about all of that he just
No.
laid out?
No,
Okay.
I looked at it.
So then all in favor of the motion as stated? Okay, then you guys? I'll show
Just
you.
need to.
So this one we're gonna initial. You guys can sign and initial. There's also typically a mail folder that, if you get into the office during the day, typically it's on Chris's desk. You can take a look at it, they do have it here. And they'll have, these guys will have a mailbox, right? In the office, you'll have a mailbox where they'll stick things, and if you're like me, they'll sit there for 6 months until Dawn reminds you to go check it.
Did you pick up the mail I left you?
When did you leave it?
A week ago? I emailed you too. It's, on the
Oh,
lighting,
I did
on
not.
the lighting. Okay, it's, I'll grab it.
Okay. See?
Charlotte and Tyler, your mailboxes are actually, third door down on the right. You've got kind of like the employee kitchen, kind of the kitchen, Gene's office, who's our maintenance person during the day. Where the conservation commission mailbox is, the planning board mailbox. Yeah, just let me know, and I'll show you where it is.
Okay.
But I trust that if there's something that's urgent and important, you guys don't leave it to that, because even when I'm here, I forget to poke my head in there.
You'd stop leaving your paychecks in there, put them in your mail folders,
All right, next item, outstanding minutes. So I had minor comments, which Dawn outlined, so we'll take a motion in a second, and then we can review if you guys have any comments.
So you need a motion?
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from Nottingham's Selectmen's meeting dated March 7th, 2016.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? Did you guys have a chance to look at them, and did you have any?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, Dawn, was whether that high velocity flush was correct, is high velocity? Because I thought they were like low flow.
No, high velocity is the correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. All right. Barring no other, discussion, all in favor of accepting the minutes of March 7th as edited?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approved. All right, BOS reports from assigned boards and committees. So, Budget Committee hasn't met?
No,
Nope, not since, not for a while.
yep,
Yep.
No.
No, February.
yeah, their work's done.
Their work is done for now. Marston Property Committee is done. Their work is done. We presented final report to this board. Has that been posted on the website? It has, right? On the town website? The final report of the MPAC committee?
Yes, yes,
So if you
Yep.
guys, if you haven't seen that, you can get that out on the website. Planning board, it feels like a long time, but it was a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah,
And I can't remember,
next meeting is this Wednesday.
next meeting is this Wednesday. And I can't remember anything of significance that happened at that last meeting. It was actually really short.
You know, we had a short meeting, we had what, little lot line adjustment?
Yeah, it was a simple lot line
Planning board
adjustment.
will be seeing next month a 24 lot subdivision
Okay.
on Flutter Street, and then a couple of smaller 1, 2 lot type things.
Okay, all right. So is this where you want us to do the, appointments? Yeah, for this year. Okay,
So we get the PB, we get the planning board, we get the budget committee.
yep. I kinda wanna talk about CIP too, and I think this might be a place to do it, because CIP used to be, kind of its own committee. And, there was a Board of Selectmen rep who was part of that committee, just like all of the other committees. The committee in the last couple of years has kind of lagged and struggled a bit. So this past year, the Board of Selectmen took the lead on it, and Jean Reed and John Moran, who have been members of it in the past, were kind of working with us on that. I think we did a good job in terms of getting the CIP cleaned up a little bit, this year, and I would personally like to see it continue to be a viable tool that is maintained and, shared with the other boards as appropriate. So I personally would like to see that be another committee, subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen, if that's the right way to say it, versus us taking the lead on that. And I don't know, Chris, if you have any comments or perspective on that from your seat.
No, I think, it should be a relatively quick process this year. We've got the backbone pretty well laid out.
Yep.
And there's not much in the pipeline. We don't think much is gonna change in the plan this year. We're not gonna add a whole lot, we're not gonna take a whole lot out, so,
Yep.
it should be a relatively smooth process. We need to do it sooner in the year than we did last year. We need to have it done before the budget process really gets underway.
Yep.
And we weren't able to do that last year for a whole host of reasons, but, ideally, that's done kind of in the summer and put to bed in, when the world wakes up again in September, you finish it off so that you come into the budget season,
Yep. Yep.
informed by that, rather than doing it at the same time.
Right.
Yep.
One thing I would also like to see is, the school board kind of went off and did their CIP this year. And so there were two separate paths, that eventually came together, but I personally, again, would like it to be one, see it as one process. Because we have impact fees, we have to have one CIP. We can't have two CIP, so I'd kinda like to see that process back together. So I don't know, I mean, Tyler, I don't know if you've had any exposure to CIP, but I know you have, Charlene, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from my perspective in being on the CIP in the past is when I was on the budget committee, I was on the CIP committee, and it was, I think, a very town-wide committee, so there was a representative from the budget committee, a representative from the Board of Selectmen, a representative from the building committee, the school board, the planning board, and it was everybody kind of sitting down and kind of going over, looking at any updates to what the Office of Energy and Planning might have in relation to the town and what's going on. And then it was, at least when I was involved in it, it was pretty well driven by the planning board. Was kind of, the planning board member was the chair, if
Yeah.
you would, and the budget committee was kind of the keeper of the Excel spreadsheet or whatever. And
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that worked well. And then usually it was the town administrator who would kind of coordinate with the Board of Selectmen, all the different department heads submitting in the reports and
Yeah.
reviewing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a lot of meetings at the time I was involved. Probably the biggest thing was updating the big plan, which I don't necessarily think has to be updated every year.
Yeah.
But
So the CIP committees are often a committee of the planning board, but in our town, the way it was implemented, it's a committee of the Board of Selectmen. But in the past, a planning board member was always the de facto chair.
yeah, when
Okay.
I was involved in it, it was
Okay.
the kind of the planning board member who would kind of, spearhead
Okay.
the meetings and,
Yeah, yeah. So maybe we should bring that back to the planning board and, so I think we should do it, I think we should have a separate committee. I think there should be a Board of Selectmen's rep. We can take the lead on that. We could probably bring it back to the planning board and let them know that that's kind of the direction we wanna go back to and get their temperature on that.
and I think it's important to have the school board involved
I agree.
on it, and it be one document that looks at the whole town.
Yep, I agree 100%. Okay. So that means we need Board of Selectmen representation on planning, budget, and CIP. So Tyler, for your information, the way the Selectmen's Board has historically worked is, like, all of these things have been a rotation. And, so you are fulfilling Mark's seat. Charlene is fulfilling Mary's seat. So the way it's historically worked is the newest elected member would be on the budget committee. I being in my second year was in planning, so in your second year you'd be in planning. And in your third year, you'd be chair and not really have a committee assignment, but act as backup. So if we go by the seats, then it would be Charlene's seat's turn to be on the budget committee, your seat's turn to be on planning. I will tell you that, I don't know why we got out of, I don't know why it came up, but in the first year, somebody asked me if I wanted to be on planning instead of budget, and I had been on the budget committee for a number of years. And I didn't want to do planning in my first year, just because it's harder, and to me, it was a bigger challenge. So I was in budget committee, and I think if you're new to all of this in the town, budget committee is a good place to start, because it kind of gives you an overview of all of the departments and the operation of the town. So my suggestion would be, is that at least for this year, we swap it, and that you would do budget, and then Charlene, because she's been on planning for a long time, continue as planning. But with that said, I wanna hear what you guys have to say, and I don't know, if you have a preference.
Doesn't matter. Whatever.
So my thought is, because I've been on the planning board, and there is a lot to it, and I'm still just constantly learning. And I've always been of the strong belief that, the budget, you learn a lot being on the budget committee. So, I mean, I think if you're open to it, I'd be open to staying on the planning board. So that keeps some consistency there. And then, that requires twice a month, where the budget committee really doesn't start up again until, I think there's a meeting in June, and then September is when it starts up, but.
Yeah. And then September, they do bi-weekly, and then they get into weekly.
Yeah.
So they don't start up with weekly.
Yeah. So if you're all right with it, I'm okay with staying on the planning board, just to keep that.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
And then it will be an interesting challenge to figure out next year, as we move to
Well, with five.
how I do like the idea of rotation, because I do like everybody getting exposure to all of the different
Yeah.
boards and committees. And then I can take the lead with the CIP, because I think, again, that's gonna be a couple of meetings, not a real committee.
Yeah.
And then I can be backup for you guys,
Yeah.
if there's a meeting that you can't attend.
Just a reminder, it's an ex officio seat, meaning if you can't go, you can send somebody else and they vote. So it's not your personal seat,
Right.
it's the seat of the selectmen, so if
Right. Right. I just, on another, while we're on the topic of other boards and committees, so we also meet with the Conservation Commission quarterly. They come in and we talk about, what projects they've got going on. We used to meet with the school board periodically, like quarterly, I think, as well. And I think we alternated, we'd go to their meeting, and then they'd come to our meeting. It's very important to me that we, reopen the dialogue and the lines of communication with all of the boards and committees. And, that we get back into acting like we're one town, and that we're all part of the same team. So I would like to also reach out to the school board and get, their thoughts on kind of starting those meetings again.
Yeah.
Whether it's quarterly or whatever makes sense. But I think particularly with things like Marston on the horizon, that it's important that we stay in tune with them.
Yeah, I think it's important too. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. All right, anything else on that, Chris?
no.
Okay. All right, town administrators report.
Okay, this is often where we will ask you to sign miscellaneous nonsense, or I'll update you on things that are going on. As I was telling Donna just before we started, it was a really quiet week last week, and kind of town meeting hangover mode. The one piece of paper to sign is our final report of appropriations. Basically, this is a report to the state DRA on what town meeting voted on. This is the final budget. We amended it in town meeting a little bit, so we have to update the numbers, and in this case, we added money to the budget. And so this, I need you to sign, that says this is really what town meeting voted on. We have the minutes of the town meeting from the town clerk, and I don't know if they've been finalized. I know I got a draft, and I think she's got a couple of edits to make, but those will go up on the website shortly.
Okay.
And that's that. The second thing I need you to sign, ironically, Tyler, it's a poll license agreement.
Do you know anything about those?
I do, yeah. I don't know about those.
I wish you had been here a few months ago. Last year, the selectmen revised the application and the language around our licenses for poles and conduits. Any utility has to get a license to put those things up in town. They apply for it and get a license to put it up. This is one that was applied for before we made the change. This is the last of the old, the application was in, here's the actual license. So you are signing the last of the old version of these. So if you wanted to,
Okay.
you know, remember, I think I told you at the time, we had one
Right,
thing outstanding that was kind of grandfathered with the old arrangements, and this is it.
okay,
We're not aware of anybody else doing anything else, but with developments coming, you'll see, you know, as new private roads go in, you'll see them, or as they move from one side of the street to another, or something like that. And this basically is pretty boilerplate, but it's between us and the New Hampshire Electric Co-op. And you sign it, and then it goes to the town clerk. So,
do you guys have any questions about this?
the
No.
3 copies of the same document there. Let's see, and then in terms of news, well, Paul already stole my thunder on the Flutter Street stuff coming up. That was the one piece of news I had. That's all right. But one thing I do want to talk to you about, we have posted and are accepting applications for the position of Recreation Director.
Okay,
That posting went up just before town meeting, so 10 days ago or so, and there are a couple days left. If anyone's interested in watching at home, there's information on the website about it. In my time here, the board has not hired a department head. We don't have turnover at that level very often. So I wanted to talk with you about how you want to be involved in that process. I will be going through applications and setting up some interviews probably late next week or early the following week. I may do a round of phone interviews depending on how many I've got to wade through. I know that the head of the Barrington Rec Department is going to come in and help sit with me on interviews.
oh, good,
And somebody from the NYA will also be joining us. So what comes out of that, I don't know. I'm hoping it's a clear, single, obvious choice. We'll have one, kind of 2 internal candidates, one that's an employee and one that's a seasonal employee. And then we have, so far, I don't know, 8 or 10 responses from people that we don't know. So the question to you is, how do you want to proceed on that? If you're comfortable with getting that far, do you want to get in on the interviews? Do you want me to bring you somebody when it's done? Do you want to bring you, how do you want to do it? I've never done that with you,
Yep.
you, the board, so
yeah.
what is your pleasure?
Well, I don't want to sit in on multiple interviews.
I didn't think you would.
I don't,
You're certainly welcome.
no, I would like to meet, I'm just trying to decide if I want to meet like the top 2 candidates or the top 3 candidates or just your one recommended candidate.
I mean, part of, it sounds like what you're doing is you've got like a little mini committee, right?
Yeah.
Of people that are knowledgeable and or would be, you know, potential partners and collaborators. So I think that that's important. I think their opinion is much more important than my opinion, to help do the pre-screening. I think as far as from where I sit, I think once it gets narrowed down to maybe the top, you know, it will depend, I would imagine, on how many applicants you get, as far as how many you narrow it down to, whether it's the top 3 or the top 2 candidates. And then I think, you know, to me, then come in and participate in the interview process. But I think kind of a committee of those, you know, those relationships are more important.
Right. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree.
So why don't you see how it goes, how your interviews go? Because you may get to the point where you're interviewing your last kind of 3 candidates and there's a clear winner in your mind, in which case you can just inform us of where you're headed and why, and then we could interview that one person. Or if you're down to the point where you have 2 or 3 really good candidates, then we can jump in and do interviews at that point.
Okay,
Okay?
easy enough.
And would those would be non-public, right? Or would they be,
Yes, we would do that in non-public.
okay,
Yep.
all right.
And we wouldn't do it on a Monday night in all likelihood. We'd, you know, or we do it early on Monday night or whatever. But
Yeah, okay.
we'll have, before you meet again, I should have a good sense of where we'll be.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about what I think is needed, you know, it's someone who can bring together all of the different organizations.
Yeah.
You know, look critically at what we're doing now and determine if we're doing the right things or if there's new, you know, programs that we should be looking at. And then, you know, someone who can help provide some leadership on Marston as well. So those are kind of the things that I'm looking for. Okay, anything else on anything?
Nope.
All right. Any questions for Chris, you guys?
No, none on that.
Okay. So no appointments. This would be typically when we would have different appointments.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock? Hey, I tell you what, I run a good meeting. So we'll skip over that. We'll go to general business, meeting schedule for 2016, 2017.
Yeah, the board has been in the habit of meeting every other Monday night for I don't know how long, since longer than I've been around. You have a printout of what those dates are. Before we make too many plans, just want to check with you and make sure that's how you want to keep doing things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. You know, we moved to the 6:30 time frame because that worked for all of us at the time. Some boards meet at 6:30, some meet at 7. I don't know how that works with your work schedule.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, the 6:30 will work.
Okay. The every other Monday works. The only thing I'll say is that, you know, typically Chris is pretty good about keeping in touch with each of us about our schedules. And again, I don't know what your job is like, but periodically I have to travel.
Yeah, me too.
And so, you know, I kind of have two views on it. If there's, you know, a night where there isn't a lot on the agenda and somebody's gonna be away, then I personally think it's okay to go with the meeting with, you know,
With the two people.
If it's something that's kind of bigger and more important, and we can accommodate a change in the date, then I've always appreciated that. You know, and we're not bound by law to any schedule.
No.
So if we decide to skip one meeting, one Monday and do 2 weeks in a row, because that works better, then we have that flexibility as well. So I think, you know, if we can just kind of look at this now, maybe, or not now, but sometime over the next week or so, and let Chris know if we anticipate any big issues. I mean, it's not, right now, knock on, for Micah, we don't have anything big that typically comes over the summer.
No, you never see anything big. I mean, you know the budget's coming, but other than that, you'd never see,
Yeah.
you never see it till it's here, so.
Exactly. Yeah. So then our next meeting would be April 4th and April 18th, which works out really great because I'm gonna be out of town on April 25th.
There you go.
All right. Any questions, comments on that? Okay. Town meeting follow-up. Okay. So the first thing I want to say on town meeting is I just want to thank all of the election workers who worked both on the Tuesday and, you know, on Saturday, the town meeting, the day of town meeting. I thought everything went smoothly, thought it went great on both days. I think everybody from, you know, the supervisors of the checklist to the moderators and to the staff here that bears the burden of the setup. I thought everything went great, and want to thank everyone for their hard work.
Great.
So there were a couple things that came out of town meeting.
Yep.
So I just kind of wanted to get an update on those.
The two things that we didn't see coming, one, the septic system in this building. We're gonna line up, we need to rent a backhoe to do that work. I'm gonna, I think tomorrow, get a date from Johnny on when that works for his other projects.
So is that for replacing the pipe?
Yes.
Okay.
What we wanna do is line it up with other stuff he's doing, the backhoe, you know, We're gonna dig up the flagpole on the square at the same
Okay.
time, because we need the same piece of equipment. We don't own a backhoe, so we gotta,
Yep.
and fit it into his, now that the snow is done,
Both ours.
so we'll know, you know, within the next couple of days, we'll have a good date on when we're gonna block out to do that, and we gotta figure out what it means for operations in this building to,
Okay,
you know, kind of take us out of commission for a day, or if we need to get
Yep.
porta potties or whatever we're gonna do.
so initially we talked about swapping out the toilets,
Yep,
and then potentially further down the road doing the pipe, so now
Yep.
we're gonna do the pipe and the toilets.
that was, you know, in taking the spirit of what town meeting told us to do.
Yeah,
We can do it in reverse order and take our time and see if we can solve the problem.
yeah,
Without doing that, I always default to doing what town meeting
no,
says to
I
do,
think- I
so.
think that makes sense, and it's the outside portion of the pipe, it's not the,
Yeah, the inside, we don't have enough money in the bank to do
Yeah,
that, so,
yeah.
hopefully that
So
solves it.
where was the crack in the pipe on the outside?
There's no crack, it's just corroded and getting clogged, and it's, right outside the front of this building. The bathrooms that we have trouble with are right across the hall here, and the tank is, just out past the generator, or near, kind of just after the generator out there. It's only 25 feet or so from the building, something like that. We shot a camera down the pipe a few weeks ago, and it's the end of the pipe that's the worst, out on the far end. That's also the part that's easy to replace. So, our plan was to first change the toilets and see if that solved the problem, and then if that didn't work, change the pipe. The toilet being the faster, cheaper, maybe it'll work, maybe it'll buy us some time solution. The changing the pipe being the more expensive, if we have to, solution. But coming out of town meeting, we're gonna do the pipe, and we'll probably do the toilets too. But it's not, you know, if we solve it with the pipe, then we won't have to do the toilets, and we'll keep our money, but, so it's about, we'll replace about 20-25 feet of pipe, depending on what the electrical situation is in the ground, and Paul hasn't sketched that out yet, but.
I mean, should we just replace the whole pipe from the inside all the way out?
We'd love to, but it's under a concrete pad, and to get at it would require digging up the concrete from here through the kitchen out there, and be
get at it.
considerably more expensive and difficult. We're not precluding that solution in the future by doing the outside piece. It would just be, it would be an order of magnitude more expensive, and,
We're talking to do what we want to do now. I mean, I priced it out, and this is if we had to labor it out, but we're gonna, you know, Johnny's gonna do the work. So we're right in that $5,000 ballpark. To do the whole project, I mean, we're probably talking $30,000 to $50,000.
yeah.
so
Plus the loss of time in the building and.
this is way outside my area of expertise, but from conversations I've had with different people, my understanding is that there's actually techniques that can be used now to replace pipes like that, that involves kind of like putting a new pipe in that layers inside or around the existing one. You kind of snake the new
Snake it.
pipe in and pull the other one out.
That is a possibility, but this is the old cast iron pipe. If we were doing PVC to PVC pipe, that would be no problem.
Okay.
And who's the gentleman that I just drew a blank on his name? Mr. Chase. That came with the camera. The problem is, you know, the 4-inch pipe is, especially on the outside, is to the brittle point where he's afraid if we stuck anything into that pipe without replacing it, we'd shatter it or crack it.
Okay.
And then we could be right back to what you had asked earlier, Charlene, was how much are we gonna dig up of the building?
Right.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, this may not be the permanent solution, but it may buy us 5 or 10 years for all,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
But there is a so you're gonna go in there with a PVC to the cast iron
yeah,
pipe?
yeah, yeah. So we're gonna cut the cast iron pipe outside the building.
Yeah.
And then there's a fitting that goes from cast iron to PVC. Put the new Schedule 40 PVC pipe right into the septic tank. And then the difficult part is the underground electrical service comes right in by that septic pipe there. The transformer and the pipe are like that far apart. So, you know, we've got to call DigSafe and all that, and I've got that form filled out. And then we'll just pipe it into the septic system, and if we do the toilets, that should fix the problem temporarily. I think
And
long-term,
you said that's the worst part of the pipe.
oh, definitely, we saw the video, and you can go to YouTube and see our
We
video.
can show you the pipe if you
Yeah.
really want to see it.
Yeah, he posts all his work on YouTube, so
Um,
it was, yeah.
So is it gonna get done before, camp?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I thought that was a legitimate question about whether or not it was gonna cause problems with camp when all of a sudden you have all these other kids and,
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, that's when it's worst, and, yeah, we'll get there.
And the other part of the process, once we cut the old part of the cast iron pipe that's no good, Mr. Chase can jet at a very reasonable price. He'll jet the existing pipe, and he feels from the outside in, and there's a lot less issue with possible damage that way.
what do you mean jet?
Basically, rotor it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
You'll be able to get at pieces, lengths of that pipe that we can't get at now, that are under the floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is how long is this gonna take?
I mean, to dig the hole, cut the pipe, put everything back together, we're talking a day. I mean, and then to replace a hot top, my recommendation is, we'll do it when Johnny does hot topping in town. We'll run with dirt on, I mean, we're talking a maximum 12 by 30 area, outside the double gym doors.
Okay,
We'll just compact it and pave it when we've got hot top in town.
okay.
Are we gonna get the toilets too, though? I mean,
Yeah, we can do that at the
Yeah.
same time. If, I don't know, we haven't actually decided who's gonna, it's probably be Dougie that's gonna do the pipe, but,
Right, yeah.
we'll do the toilets, we can do ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, the concept of the toilets, they work with air pressure. So there's a air compression thing in the back of the toilet tank. So when you flush, it, with compressed air, evacuates the bowl.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions on that one?
It does sound like that we will have, probably in the near term, the other half of the pipe that would have to be replaced at some point in time.
I mean, that's our recommendation. Chris and I have talked, and I mean, that's really it's a long day, I'm sorry. Capital reserve item, long-term for building maintenance, that's, I mean, because we're talking substantial, that's a CIP thing too, because we're over our threshold,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah, if, the longer we can put that off, the better, and the more likely we can combine it with something else, where who knows what else, but, if you ever have an opportunity to do that.
But it is something, to your point, it's something that should start showing up on the CIP. Yeah. And the other item, out of town meeting?
The other amendment to the operating budget was essentially an increase in the cemetery maintenance line, with a specific revenue source identified, being a trust fund. The trustees of the trust funds are still working on this. I was with them today. We're not sure that fund really exists. It may have in the past. There's a lot of homework going on, and Rhoda Capron's done a lot of homework, and some of the Historical Society folks have found a lot of things, and the trustees of the trust funds have found a consolidation of a bunch of different funds that happened 7-8 years ago. And so before we spend that money, we've got to make sure that money really exists, and the trustees of the trust funds are working on that. They've got a good plan on where they're gonna find the information they need, and we'll probably end up going to the Attorney General and say, this is what we found, this is what we'd like to do.
Okay.
It may be that everything is perfectly fine the way things were done 7 or 8 or 10 years ago, and everything's legal, and we know where all the money is, and everything's fine. And the trust fund that was identified at town meeting doesn't exist anymore. That's one possible outcome of all that. If that's the case, then we really don't have extra money. The town meeting has appropriated something that doesn't exist. So,
Yep.
in that case, the $1,000 won't materialize. Another possibility is that we do identify some funds that maybe should have been in these trusts, all this time, and there may or may not be enough money to do what town meeting asks us to do. But they got a lot more homework to do before we're ready to figure that out. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of different funds in play. These are things that go back to 1890s. You know, we don't have great records on, you know, which you know, bachelor or plot. Somebody may know what it is, but the trustees of the trust funds don't necessarily know what geography is associated with which money, and so they're gonna sit with the historical society folks and the cemetery trustees and see what we can
Okay,
figure out. So you'll hear more about that, hopefully that it's just all solved,
okay.
but it's gonna take a little time to work through all that. But I think they have what they need. They got a lot of work to do, but they know where they're going.
Okay. Do you guys, anything else on, town meeting, or anything you wanna talk about or follow up on the front relative to town meeting? Okay. I have to, one other thing though on that town meeting is that I thought that, it was a long town meeting, going from 9 to 4. The fact that the first 3 warrant articles took 6 hours, was certainly longer than I had anticipated, but I have to say, I thought the discussion was really good. Whether people were for or against, the articles, I thought that there was good, thoughtful discussion on both sides.
I think one thing that I thought of kind of after, and it's, maybe it's part of the discussion with the CIP or further discussion is, if you looked at how many warrant articles there were, right, a lot of them were capital reserve funds. And so maybe in the CIP we can look at, so maybe we don't raise and appropriate $10,000 from this fund, this fund, this fund every year. Maybe we rotate them in some way so it's the same amount of money. It's just kind of 1 or 2 less warrant articles. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just kind of something that I was thinking. We had like 18, warrant articles, and a lot of them were capital reserve funds, and could we rotate?
We might be able to consolidate them into one.
Yeah.
Yeah, may I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I know at home where we live, they do that. In a lot of other towns, they'll do one article and list all the separate capital.
The capital reserves.
Capital reserves in that thing, so.
Yeah, that's how Raymond does it as well. I shared that with Chris, so I think we could definitely do that.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
you still have the ability to
it's not gonna shave off hours off of the town meeting, but.
No, but you still, I mean, a lot of them are amounts that people are used to and support every year.
Right.
But you don't lose the ability to adjust them.
Right.
So I agree. I think we should look at that this year. Okay, Marston property. So I just wanted to talk about next steps on Marston. Cause the, MPEC committee recommended to the Board of Selectmen that the board, form 2 new committees, one being kind of like a building committee, for lack of a better term, and then the other being a fundraising committee. So that was the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. If we have a better idea or a better approach, we can certainly, take a different approach. But I wanted to get guys' impact on, what you think we should do next and how we might kind of get that started. And I welcome your input on that as well. So, any thoughts?
Of course I have thoughts. So one of my thoughts is, not have 2 separate committees, right? That we have one committee, that has a variety of skill sets on it, some which are kind of the number crunching folks, and some that are the building planning type folks. Reason why I'm thinking that versus 2 separate ones is because I think it's really important that there's consistency, and that everybody knows what the other is doing, because there needs to be that long-term analysis of how much this is gonna cost us moving forward. You know, everybody's been kind of thinking, you know, okay, we need to build it, and that's where all the focus has been, is the building, but we need some people there that are seeing, okay, what are we gonna build? How much is that gonna cost us, you know, moving on? So when you start to look at fundraising, you're also looking at how much you're gonna need to support the project ongoing. So I think that's kind of where I've been thinking about it, is maybe we meld those two together. Now, maybe we meld them together, and maybe there's like, you know, some folks will go off and do the number crunching, and, you know, the other folks are gonna go off and, you know, figure out what kind of, you know, groundwork needs to be done and stuff. But, you know, but still, they're still talking to each other.
Yeah, so there's a mechanism where they might meet on different functions, but continuously
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah,
Okay,
those are my thoughts.
okay. What do you think?
I mean, I think that's a good idea, that everybody's in the room together, so they know, not only the people, like Charlene said, that have got the actual numbers, and then if there's people in there that are gonna be doing fundraising, they can actually hear the numbers saying,
Yep,
you know, we can't go from step A to B unless we raise this amount of money, or whatever it is, so.
yep,
I think the more input, probably the better it'll be.
okay, great. How do you suggest we get, how do you suggest we get moving forward with that?
I don't know, I have not figured in my head what the ideal committee thing looks like. I think, we're past the point where we need a lot of cooks in the kitchen on the, where are we gonna put the ball field, what's gonna go where. We've, you know, we needed that
Yep,
in the last go-around. We needed people doodling on their kitchen table about
yep,
where can we put this stuff. We need to get past that, and we need a very small, very technically capable group of people to help oversee the implementation of what physically gets built there.
yep,
Presumably that falls to the staff with some professional backup, volunteer, hopefully backup, to make sure that we're, you know, building the right thing the right way. But we don't need a big bunch, and we don't need a lot of input on that. I think we just need to get some bounds set about who's responsible for what, and go do it. This is what we have to work with, go do it. But that can't be done independent of the financial,
right,
long-term financial thing, so, I don't know how to meld those two together. And then on the fundraising front, I think you probably need one, I don't know whether it's a committee or a group or whatever it is, a person. There's really two flavors of fundraising that are gonna need to be done here. One is an institutional fundraising that is primarily grant writing with a little bit of relationship development before then, hopefully.
yep,
And one is a much more public, small dollar, public public involvement kind of thing. Those two worlds need to talk to each other, but they're very different skill sets, and they're very different,
yep,
you know, to find the handful of experienced grant-seeking volunteers is, you know, that's the holy grail. You don't actually do that very often because those people are hard to find. There's a lot of legwork, and then there's the, you know, that grant-seeking operation that's a skill just like building a field is.
yep,
You can't rely on, you know, just a generic town committee to do that well.
Right.
You've really gotta do that seriously, and so that's a whole lot of I don't know, but those are all different things that you have to find a way to fit together.
yep,
I would be nervous about trying to do that as one body. You know, think about how the MPEC was a little bit of cat herding going on, and you only had one mission there, and now we have
Right.
3 or 4, so.
But in some ways, right, so to do some of the fundraising, right, you need the story, right? And so what's the story? And so some of that, you know, taking what Ironwood had put together, determining the feasibility of that, you know, kind of tuning some of those numbers and what needs to be involved in that. What's the long-term, you know, impact of that? And then what's the whole purpose of it, right? That So that all needs to be flushed out, and then there's kind of that fundraising, which could take on grant writing, it could take on, some levels of townspeople, individual contributors, sponsorships, that kind of stuff. But I think, when I thought about it and listening to, at town meeting, listening to the presentations and as well as listening to, some of the discussion that went on, right? I thought, whoa, this is gonna take someone with a real good project management. I mean, that's what it needs, is someone with
Yeah.
really good project management skills
Yeah.
to kind of get this to the next, to take this on in the next step.
Yeah.
And then someone with a really good, sharpened pencil.
Yeah.
Who's good at that.
Yeah.
But I think our responsibility is to flush that out, what the next direction is, right? So to think about what is it that we want the next group to do, and kind of almost like lay out a scope of work, if you would, that we give to the committee to give some direction to,
Yeah.
if it's a combination
Yeah.
of staff and
Yeah.
individual volunteers.
Go ahead.
The one comment I have to follow up with Chris is, looking back when we built the fire station, you really need to have one point person approving the final stuff. Because the issue I had with that, we had hired a clerk of the works working with me. But then we had building committee members, we had fire department members signing off on approvals that didn't even meet code.
Yeah.
So that's why, and Charlene's right, we need to have, and Chris and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, we need to stay focused on who's lining up and checking, whether it be volunteer work or contractor work, making sure they're doing what we need, not what they wanna do.
Right, right. So I think you're right. I think we need to define the scope of scope and mission of the committee, just like we did with the exploratory committee. And then I think we need to look at the roles that we need, right? And define the roles, because then that will make it easier for us to go out and solicit the support. So, since I've been mostly involved in that, what about if Chris and I try to take a pass at drafting that for us for the next meeting? And then that will at least give us a basis of discussion for the next meeting for the three of us. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Does that work for you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it would be good, to get the, okay, so we've learned some lessons from what we did with the fire department,
Right.
so that, getting some of that input would
Yeah.
be good. And I know that you guys in the Marston committee looked at other parks. I don't know how much you talked to folks who were involved in getting those parks go from, the ground to,
We looked at them just from the perspective of what do they have? What does it look like? We did not talk to any of them about the process of developing them.
yeah.
Okay, so let's do that. I do want us to try and move on it relatively quickly, so that we can at least, I don't wanna lose half the year. And
Right,
then all of a sudden say, oh, wait a minute, we haven't done anything, so.
right.
But I also don't wanna rush in not planned.
Yeah, because I wanna make sure that we've number crunched everything. We know how much this is gonna cost us. Cause I'll go back to the fire department as an example. The fire department has cost us way more money than we ever had imagined. And so there were some things done that could have been done better so that we don't have some of the expenses that we have now. So I want to kind of use the fire department or the fire building, not the department, but as an example of, let's make sure that we've thought of everything,
Okay.
so that, and we can run fast, but let's run fast and think of
Smart.
everything that we can.
Be smart
Yeah.
about it, yeah.
Where do we stand with Ironwood right now?
As far as I'm concerned, they've fulfilled their services to us.
Okay. So, we're gonna need the potential thing that gets really slow is the engineering that we end up waiting for. That's gonna come before you in any way, and no matter what happens, that's gonna involve the selectmen. So what can we do for next steps with engineering right now to stay in front of? I mean, we know, we have the sketch, we know what we wanna build, we have the phasing-ish. Maybe you and I can talk about that as part of what we're doing, but I think we might wanna act on that now. You, the three of you may wanna act on that now to
At
stay in
least
front of,
engaging someone for the engineering.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
site.
to stay in front of the summer, because the season's gonna go by.
Right, right, okay, yeah.
If-
So we'll have to have the discussion about, do we want to go forward? I mean, the easy answer could be just go forward with CMA, right?
That's the path of least resistance. Yeah.
Right, exactly. However, I'm not sure I really want to do that, because there were some things that I wasn't completely happy about in our interactions with them. So we may want to look at other options as well. But then you're kind of starting over with someone.
Yeah, but I think somebody could pick that up and say, okay, I need to fit this in here, and then, I mean, the permitting stuff is all
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. I don't know, we should talk through that, but that's, you don't wanna, at this point, you don't wanna wait to appoint a committee and for a committee to get around to
Right,
hiring an engineer to do the engineering and the permitting, because we're gonna miss the season if we do that.
okay.
That's right, I mean,
Okay.
just that alone is 3 or 4 months, if history is any indication.
Right,
And that would not leave us time to either do a lot of work ourselves or hire somebody to do work. We can't hire this work. If we want to put shovels in the ground in 16, we need to,
okay. So let's you and I talk about that and come back with
Okay.
a recommendation for the next meeting, see if that makes sense. Anything else on Marston?
I mean, I just want to make it clear, the Marston property is owned by the town of Nottingham,
Yes,
and the youth associations, the school possibly could be using
yes,
the, okay.
yes. That is the goal. Just like the school uses the
Yeah,
field
yeah,
out here, and the MYA uses the field out here. Okay, school cable franchise request.
okay, so I sent you this here, quick little memo and a request from Dr. Godomsky, or a quote. This is third or fourth project or purchase of about this size in the past year or so. They're trying to square away their ability to broadcast in multiple places within the building and get the audio right.
So that there's no loud squeal during town meeting?
That, I don't know if that's gonna be related to this or not. I think this work was underway before town meeting, so, you are the keeper of those funds, and they are intended for use for the broadcast system for both the town and the school, so, you know, this, at this level, this is, you know, price-wise, this is comparable with what, the kinds of things that we would do in this building. It's, you know, it's a vendor that they've used before,
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, then I'll take a motion.
Make a motion?
Read out as, Chris wrote us out the motion right there.
Oh. Make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approves the expenditure of $1,867 from the cable franchise fee fund for audio equipment at Nottingham School.
I'll second that.
All in favor? All right. If there was any non-public discussion tonight, which there is not, this would be the point that we would do it at. only other topic that I wanted to raise was around, you know, I think if you guys wanna give some thought and have a discussion about if there are any particular priorities for this board for the coming year that you think we should focus on. And, I mean, I already kind of shared mine in that I wanna make sure that we establish or reestablish good communications with the other boards and committees in town. I see that as a priority for us for this year. If you guys want to think about it, we can put that on a agenda in an upcoming meeting as well to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The only other thing, a couple things questions that I had. So one of my thoughts was, I know Marston's gonna be probably, you know, one of the top things that we work on, but I wonder if there's other things that we wanna to kinda, you know, talk about that we wanna try to get accomplished, you know. I mean, I think the school is, you know, that's a meeting, so I don't see that as
Yeah, that's not.
like a big time-consuming thing. It's just really just improving the communications back and stuff. But I didn't know if there's, you know, other things that we wanted to talk about. You know, I mean, when I was running for it, you know, a couple of ideas that I had was maybe looking at reinstituting the Economic Development Committee. I did have one individual come up to me interested about starting up an agriculture commission. You know, so, you know, I didn't know if we wanted to maybe spend, you know, some time in an upcoming meeting talking about other ideas that, you know, we might have, especially we're, you know, brand new board, I think, with some fresh ideas and.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's great. I think in the same time, you know, you may have a perspective on other things that are likely to come up this year that could turn out to be things for us, like potentially USA Springs, right?
Yeah. Yep, so I think if, you know, if we can slot out some time maybe at a meeting to talk about some of that, because, you know, I don't wanna spend all my time coming in going through meetings like this. You know?
So, Chris, if you can just, take a look at the agendas for the next couple of meetings. And, I don't think we have a lot.
Nope.
So let's schedule that for one of the next meetings. Good. Anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.